Hello everyone. So today I'm going to continue the discussion of the line with knight h3. So this is a game that was played by Fischer against Bisguier in 1963, and it was a New York Open, and Fischer opened with e4, as he always opened up until probably his match with Spassky. After e5, knight f3, knight c6, so all standard, bishop c4, we discussed this earlier, knight f6, and now Fischer commented that Steinitz considered this move unsound, knight f6, because it simply gave up a pawn. But on the other hand, after knight g5, Fischer writes that Tarrasch branded this as a duffer's move, while Panov called it primitive. But there is no other way for white to try for an advantage. Now this is, I think, an interesting assessment, because obviously today d3 is being played. But Fischer writes that, knight g5 is the only try for white to actually try to gain some opening advantage here, which is an interesting assessment. After d5, e takes d5, knight a5, bishop b5 check, c6, d takes c6, b takes c6, bishop e2, all standard so far. And after h6, knight h3. So this move was abandoned after Steinitz because he didn't have good results with it. But Fischer revived it in 1963 with success, actually. So this is, as I said, his game against Bisguier. So forgive me if I'm not pronouncing the name well. So bishop c5, again, logical stuff, the same thing that Chigorin played, and castles. So Fischer writes that it was better to delay this move a little bit by playing d3 first, which actually was my first impression too when I played this opening a few years ago, because I always thought that d3 was better first to make sure that I have the g file for the rook ready and I don't need to castle yet. So after castles, so here Fischer discusses this interesting line that after castles, because of this premature castling, black can play g5, because now king h1 should be played just to get out of this file, and now g4 and knight g1. And now knight e4. So this move, Fischer says that, well, after bishop takes g4, and black wins the exchange, but white has a better initiative here. It's an interesting line which should be discussed later. But at the moment, after castles, d3 is the logical move, and Fischer went back to Steinitz's move. So, well, this d3 and knight h3 is generally Steinitz's idea. So bishop takes h3, and g takes h3, and queen d7. And very straightforward play, and as Fischer says, he commends Bisguier for, because this is an improvement over Chigorin's play. Bishop f3, obviously, to get on a good diagonal. Fischer says that it's a hard move to play, but I had no other choice. After queen takes h3, knight d2. Now here, Fischer says that instead of knight d2, he could have played bishop g2. But after queen h4, well, he was saying that he wanted to play queen e1, which wins either the knight or the pawn. But the problem is that after rook f8 and queen takes a5, knight g4 simply and h3 is very dangerous for black, maybe even winning. But what Fischer missed was that after queen takes h3, he could play instead, after bishop g2, queen h4, queen f3, and try to get the queen out quickly and then try to exchange it with queen g3 or something. Anyway, Fischer played knight d2, which is still logical, not a bad move, and rook a d8 was played, and then bishop g2. Queen f5 was a serious mistake. Was black trying to, discourage king h1? Because if king h1, then bishop can take. But it seems a big mistake. Not a huge one, but obviously getting the queen back would have been better. Queen e6 would have been much better placed. But anyway, queen e1 was played. Now Fischer did not punish black, because here he could have played queen f3 again and simply go for exchange of queens. And Fischer also admits this and says that it could have been better to have gone for this. So after queen e1, rook fe8, very logical play apart from queen f1, or queen f5, very logical play from black. And now knight e4, a great move. It uncovers the attack on a knight and also attacks the bishop. But bishop b6 is logical. And now knight takes f6. Fischer was very critical of this move later, but he thought, what could I have done? Because basically he was afraid that the knight would come to d5 and then to f4, and he was very afraid of this, so he said, well, just go for it. Instead, Fischer says that b4 would have been an interesting try, and after knight b7, b5 with a very sharp play. But okay, it is possible that it's a very sharp and interesting line, but maybe not really liked by the modern engines. But okay, because the idea is that obviously if black takes, then this d4 square is a bit weaker than before, but obviously giving up a pawn for it. Okay, but knight f6 is what Fischer played, just taking the knight. And after queen takes f6, king h1. So Fischer is preparing f4. It's interesting. Is it better to prepare f4, or is it better to put the rook on g1 and attack? Well, in this game, we don't see the answer. We just see that Fischer plays f4. So after c5, so the idea of c5 is basically to solidify the control of the d4 square. But actually after king h1, I think g5 was recommended by Fischer to stop f4 from white. Again, modern engines don't agree too much, but again, these are not blunders or mistakes. This is some interesting ideas, so we shouldn't say that Fischer was wrong. It's just an interesting practical try, because the game went out of hand later. So after king h1, queen c3, after king h1 and c5, queen c3 was played. Fischer was very happy with this move. He said that I prevented this push of c4, and now the black's bishop is like a pawn, he was saying. But, black wasn't worried. After knight c6, knight gets rerouted to d4. But, Fischer also seemed to have not worried about this position at all, because, well, f4 is forced, because, or else black has a good solid play. So this is the best move, f4, just being it's a practical move. Obviously you don't want to sit back and see how black is improving the position. Now knight d4 is played, and now queen c4. Fischer was proud of this move because he said that, well, I have c3 now to kick the knight. So after queen g6, because now the queen is better placed here, and also it doesn't want to be in the line of the rook. So c3 now, and here Fischer opts for weakening that useless d3 pawn just to kick this knight. And it's very interesting. In his comments, Fischer says that that knight e2 was bad, and he said that, well, knight f5 is okay. But actually he missed that knight c2 was actually very good for black, because after rook b1 there is e takes f4, uncovering the attacks on the d3 pawn. But of course the knight is misplaced. It is very hard for a human to play like this. But engines think that, well, black wins a pawn, thanks very much. Well, it's an interesting line. But okay, knight f5 was played, but now the d3 pawn isn't on because the knight is blocking the queen's access to the d3 square. So after f takes c5, rook takes c5, bishop f4, and now Fischer is back in the game. Now the position is roughly level, with both sides having good chances. And okay, rook g1 might be played at some point because the bishop is badly placed. And after rook e2, it seems that black is going forward. And now bishop e4. Fischer sets up a nice trap, which wasn't hard to see actually, but it seems that Bisguier had hallucinations of some kind. Here Bisguier played rook takes b2, which is a horrible blunder. Fischer writes, Bisguier slumped and his chest collapsed as he saw that black cannot avert the loss of a piece. Well, Fischer simply played bishop b5, and there's no way to protect the knight here, which is attacked twice, and it can't move because queen will fall. Well, it was a really unfortunate mistake from the black player. But instead, player from the black side. But instead, I think that after rook takes b2, Fischer gave the line rook e8, which is obviously the best move. And bishop f3 was given by Fischer as the best reply, and it is the best reply because queen h5 needs to be prevented. But the problem here that Fischer said that after rook takes b2, chances are even. Well, he missed that actually after bishop f3, black can play knight e3, attacking the queen and attacking the rook. So this has to be taken, but after rook takes e3, black is actually winning this because, well, the bishop can't move because obviously, first of all, the rook can come to h3 as well at some point, but the whole idea of this variation is that rook g1 fails to rook takes h2 because, king takes h2 and then bishop c7. Bishop comes into the game, and this should be winning for black. I was thinking maybe bishop g2 can't be played, but if the bishop gets to b7, for example, I think it's the same thing. If bishop cannot get to g7 and cannot prevent the black rook from taking on h2, then I think this is easily winning for black. So Bisguier didn't see this variation. So after rook g1, rook takes h2, king takes h2, bishop c7, king h1, and queen d6. Yeah, none of the players saw this. It's interesting. Fischer's line was after bishop e4, rook e8, and bishop f3, and he thought that black would take on b2, but his two bishops would compensate. This was Fischer's comment. Anyway, after rook takes b2, it was all over because bishop e5 was played, and after rook e8, well, it's just delaying the inevitable. Here, Bisguier resigned. There's nothing to do. It's piece down, and the queen is attacked, and rook g8 is coming. This is simply all over. But even though white lost, it was clear that it did not turn out as a justification of the opening, right? Because the player from the black side played very well throughout the game and lost because of a huge mistake. Because even after Fischer's try with rook e8 and bishop f3 and rook takes b2, black would have been pushing this. So it wasn't that white was better. It was black made a mistake when he was better. So Fischer was also not convinced and played a bit differently in the next game. So I might look at that game. And Fischer's idea was that after bishop c5, he should have delayed the castling. Instead, he should have played d3 first, so not to allow this g5 and just crazy attack on the king. Instead, if black plays this now and pawn takes, the rook can get to g1 easily and attack. So we might see in the next game where Fischer actually delayed castling and first played d3 to see what black was doing first. Because obviously after castles, black has chances of g5. But after d3, it is black who can castle first, and then white can castle too. Okay, thank you. Hope you enjoyed this game, and see you next time.